Welcome to the Prosper series, where we share the stories of remarkable veterans and military families who have prospered in their life up to service. I'm your host, Talissa Papamau, so I'm looking forward to having conversations with other veterans and learning their stories. If you are enjoying these interview series, please let us know what topics you'd like to hear about, and we can improve in today's episode. Today we are welcoming guest Paul Warren. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
No worries, thank you for having me.
Paul is a former Muay Thai kickboxing champion turned Australian Army veteran. His life took an unexpected turn when he faced a devastating IED explosion in Afghanistan, losing his leg and a close friend. He was medically discharged in 2013. Against all odds, Paul defied doctors' predictions and competed in the Invictus Games, eventually captaining the Australian team in 2016. Paul is a published author, sharing his journey of physical injury and mental health in the book titled The Fighter. In 2020, Paul, with a team, set a high-altitude driving world record in Chile, tackling extreme conditions while attempting to summit the world's highest active volcano. These days, Paul's dedication extends to designing a veteran engagement program with Rheinmetall Defence Australia, earning them the Prime Minister's Veterans Employer of the Year award in 2020. You've certainly achieved a lot, both in service and out service, Paul. What I love about your story is that you actually had a career in fighting prior to joining. So we're keen to unpack all of that with you today. But what we'll do is we may go back to when you first joined the military and any of the key milestones or highlights of the career.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think really I just have found processes that keep me active and productive. And for me, that's just keeping ridiculously busy. Like I need a goal. I need something to push for. And this is in my DNA, I think, like that comes from, martial arts at a young age where you're just constantly trying to develop yourself. You have challenges and things like that. I joined Defence when my 10-year fight career ended. I didn't want to stay in Toowoomba and just sort of, thought there was more out there. And I think 9/11 probably played a big part in a lot of us Australians joining the Defence Force in that early to mid 2000s as well, because when we're going to get deployed more than likely. So.
For sure. So what was your training like? And tell us a bit about your actual time once you decided to join.
It was interesting actually. So I got to one area in 2008, I believe. Right at the end, everyone was on stand down sort of thing. I think that already, or the hierarchy had perceived to have already picked their team that was going to deploy in 2009. But I think it's your perception and what some things you can control. I was a little bit older and I'd had 10 years fighting, so I wasn't 18 or 19-year-old digger. I'd had a little bit of life experience. I'd been overseas, Thailand. I'd sort of I really thank my sport for giving me the resilience to sort of overcome things later on, whether it's physical or emotional. When you're a full-time fighter, you're not always going to win. You need to pick yourself up both physically and psychologically, and I think that helped me immensely. But yeah, we had a really crazy preparation for MRTF2 in 2009 where we only got a month's notice to go. So, all these things are political, as we know, and we literally got called into a CSM's office and they went, "You guys are going now too," when they decided to commit more numbers. So, a bit rushed for us.
Okay, and it for sure. It's it is amazing because I think the like you said, the diggers that have come with a bit more life experience and certainly anything that's been in fighting, they do stand out. They do assume roles of leadership. I think even at the peer level. And so I think you would have been well prepared in some, at least psychologically, in some respects, compared to some of your peers, particularly given you only had a month before you were heading off to Afghanistan. So with your career, Paul, was there one defining moment that changed your life or multiple?
My military career.
Yes.
Yep. So definitely, I try not to talk about it too much anymore because I think trauma can it can keep you in a place and time. I feel like I've evolved way past that. I'm not defined by that, which I think is a key thing. We've all come across veterans that struggle to move on from traumatic events or being discharged from defence. Where I'm a dad now, I coach people, I'm passionate about the job I do. I think, I don't think I'm defined by that incident, but the one that did really was the one that claimed Ben's life, unfortunately. The 18th of July 2009, out on patrol with the 1st Battalion, looking to find an insurgent IED, or improvised explosive device maker. Patrolled in, sort of put down on the ground. I was behind a Mag 58, luckily, because with the device that was detonated underneath us, if I was standing up, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I'm very lucky and thankful that only took my leg, really, and the loss that day and the rehabilitation that followed that was harder was the fact that you're in an incident where a good mate of a lot of ours was killed.
Thank you for that, Paul. And we've had discussions, more recently about this, about how I think you do get tired, I guess, as you said, of retelling and I think over-identifying with a particular time in your life. And I think there's a real push, as we sort of mentioned, around the broken veteran narrative. And veterans do move on from those experiences, and it's a chapter of your life. It's not the whole story. So we're definitely keen to focus on your whole story. But did you want to speak to any of that specifically?
Yeah, for sure. I think the key word that you just said to me then was identify. You're not that in that whatever incident you feel may still you will be present in your life. You're not defined by that. I think veterans, if you can overcome, some serious things, which we all have, we've all seen things that the normal 9-to-5 job does not throw at you, leverage off that. If you can overcome that, then what really can't you achieve with a good team around you, a network, and a little bit of drive?
Yeah, 100%. So with your transition, in terms of its process and everything like that, how did you find that journey?
It was a little bit messy, to be honest. I really fought to stay in because, once again, it comes back to identity. The two things I identified myself as in life was being, a fighter, and because I've done that for so long, and secondly, as a soldier. So I did fight the system to stay in a little bit longer. But you've got to start making some decisions that benefit both you as an individual and your family. So at the time I was married. I've got 2 kids, 13 and 11, Jackson, Kiani. And really, defence wouldn't let me sort of do sub 1, anything like that. So, I just made the decision that, all right, why am I here? If I'm not going to progress, why am I here? And I think for me, that's the key. If I'm progressing, if I'm developing, I'm happy. Doing that now as a coach, I'm doing that at work. That keeps me content, I guess. So, I just sort of, butted heads with a few people on the way out and said, well, why let me go then? I think because of the severity of some of our injuries around that time, defence kind of held on to us a little bit. I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind that, but once you got out, some things are actually better. I think people cling to defence, but, once you get out and you're covered under the DVA system, I get a choice on what surgeon operates on me. I get a choice on who my medical providers are. So, the doom and gloom around it, it's your perception. There's some good things that can come from it as well.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of there is a lot of support out there. Not to say that there aren't barriers and there aren't challenges, but I do think there is a lot of support, and it comes down to, at some point, it comes down to the mindset of saying, well, you know, how do I use this? I've got that support here, but how do I actually rebuild my life and move forward from that? So what were some of the steps that you took?
So I spoke down at Soldier Recovery Centre at Adelaide not too long ago, and I'd write things down, which kind of obviously led to writing a book. And with that, I write the good and the bad, what my values are, I think, as a person, and then what the logical next step is. So I kind of went through what I thought I had in terms of values as a fighter, some deficiencies I had, and then the same with defence. And then if you leverage on that, you live by those values, then you'll find the next logical step. So defence industry, I think, can play a massive part. A lot of people probably reluctantly leave defence. I'm not sure about it at the moment. There's a bit of a retention issue, but you know, if you're med discharged, you're probably fighting it a little bit. I really do feel that if you're still passionate about defence, then defence industry, you know, you're still providing capability to the nation at the end of the day. So there are some really logical steps and solutions out there. Invictus Games, the inaugural one in London was incredible to be part of it. Things like that, but you're not going to be a professional unless you're Curtis McGrath. You're not going to be a professional, you know, adaptive athlete or something like that. So these steps have got to lead to the next thing. So if you've got confidence to go and compete in front of 20, 30,000 people, then, you know, when you get home, instead of just going back to your house and doing nothing, join a community group, find a sporting club, do something that gets you out and reintegrate it back into the community. I think they're big steps. And I really feel like looking at the way we do pensions and things like that, I would like to see some change there. I think if someone wants to be employed, the first thing we do is punish them financially. Like, shouldn't we be rewarding that? It's crazy. And some of the people I deployed with, like I said, I was the old man of the group. I was 30 when I deployed in Afghan. I'm 45 now. So I think those young guys and girls, really, it's just counterproductive sitting at home on a pension, I believe, unless you've got a real sense of purpose, good network around you. There's some exceptions to the rule for sure, but I think as a whole, we can use employment, whether it's part-time job sharing, to help people re-engage and find that sense of purpose and self-worth again.
Yeah, that's been awesome advice, and it's good to hear. Like things like Invictus was like an initial stepping stone in that process of reintegration. Writing your book, I'd love to know a little bit more about that. It's fantastic that you're a published author. I think it's as a non-commissioned officer, you know, there seems to be less veterans that go on and write books. So was that a sort of therapeutic process? Did it help you get this sort of logical process and steps you're going to take in your head, or how was that for you?
Yeah, it was. Thank you. I appreciate that. It all came from a place of, and you're right, you know, non-commissioned officers tend to, just to sort of stay in their lane and not try and excel. Like, I don't know if that's from being institutionalised by defence, but Phil Thompson's my best mate. So we don't listen to anyone's advice. We do what we want to do, and we attack things a little bit. You know, when we first got out, people were like, oh, you're only private in the Army. Like, yeah, okay. Like, our rank in the Army doesn't really mean anything in the civilian world. It's about, you know, your attitude and your skill set and how you can articulate things. So the book was essentially written because I was tired of going to funerals. Jesse Bird was one of my good mates. You know, we deployed together, we worked on Nauru together. To see someone so full of life and so just naturally gifted as an athlete go down that path and as a mate really hurt. I thought I was in a position having a physical injury that you can see, particularly with men, I was in a position to say the mental health or that PTSD type recovery was worse and encourage more males to speak about it. why I was sort of male dominant is having initially worked at Mates Mates for a bit, I've sort of noticed that men and women handled trauma differently. Women are a lot open to talking and conversing about these things, where men just hide it, and it's still a bit of that old mentality until it blows up. So that was really the drive behind my first book. And yeah, sort of been approached to do a second one now with some of the things I've sort of been doing. So 2015, that was published, and yeah, who knows? It's a big project. I'm not sure I'll do a second one.
Oh, well, I hope you do, and by all means, keep us posted, and we'll all be looking out for it. So, but I couldn't agree with you more around that. I guess men and women can process and deal with their traumatic experiences differently, and I think there's value in both. I think it's great to get a man's perspective. I think I'm a far better person having worked in really male-dominated industries, and hopefully sometimes a female perspective and insight is beneficial to a bloke also.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And hats off to the women that served. And they really had to fight for their place in male-dominated. It is a little bit different now with diversity. We can't shy away from that. And a lot of the strong females I work with in defence and in the gym that want to be fighters, they don't want to be known as females. They just want to be known as, one of the people that work there. They don't like that tokenism. So I definitely take my hat off to the women that really had to push hard and sort of keep up with the men and fight to be in those male, dominated areas of employment.
Thank you. And speaking of employment, what are you up to now? Are you still involved with Rheinmetall?
I really feel the company invested in me way back in 2017 when it sent me on the expedition, and that was an ex-ADF officer working in Germany. Excuse me.
Right.
That sort of had that idea to show not only the capability of vehicles, but in veterans. And I think you were trying to show that narrative that we're not all broken. So obviously with my injuries and then writing the book, being public about mental health and things like that. And then Chris Bailey was a UK veteran. He'd broken his back in Iraq. So he'd had some severe injuries as well. I think I feel like the company invested in us. So I have gone back there. I was fortunate enough after 4 years with Rheinmetall initially to work with North Queensland Cowboys and a few other sort of roles. But defence industry for me is something I'm passionate about. I want the men and women to have the best possible equipment we can give them to do tough jobs. So, and I do feel the program we designed and implemented, like we have 5 amputees that work out there.
Right. That's amazing.
If you do education pieces in, in your workplace, and educate civilians that, have this perception of what the media puts out there, that we're all either physically or mentally broken at the end of service, that, that's obviously not true. And we've sort of proved that. And the people that are out there are kicking goals in those areas. So, yeah, it is a great program. We still work with people being medically discharged right now. We'll bring them in on work trials. It's all merit-based. You've still got to turn up with a good attitude and things like that. But it's a soft step, I feel, out of defence where you're in a familiar environment, but it's not defence. You've still got, the flexibility of like a 9 to 5 or regular job and can balance that with home life. So.
It sounds fantastic. And so tell us a bit about the expedition as well. That was a pretty good gig. Yeah,
it was quite full on. I came off to, like I said, 2 Invictus Games. I think I was around 40 at the time, and I'm like, I've treated my body like a hire car for way too long. I've been fighting since I was 9, punched and kicked. Now, early onset dementia's coming for me. I've been concussed probably for half of my life. And I'm like, I'm done physically. I just want to focus on career stuff. And then the phone rings and they're like, we want you to do this at this expedition. I'm like, yep. Straight away, my brain just went, yep, sounds cool. I'm in. Not factoring into the fact that I lived at sea level in Townsville, in the tropics at the time. So we faced temperatures of -30, where your bones literally hurt.
Wow.
Plenty of snow and ice, volcanic sand, 100 km/h winds, and then the altitude on top of that. So we got up over 6,000 metres. I think we built the world's highest rescue shelter for mountaineers to try and conquer that, because the Andes Atacama is part of the 7 summits. So a lot of the crazy mountain climbers do it with Everest, Kilimanjaro, and some of the other big summits out there. So it was a great trip. But it was dangerous as well. I think near the end I had some oxygen and my saturation was at 73 after use. So they're like, no, this is early onset edema territory and it's time to get you off the mountain. So feel very fortunate to have done it. Met some great people. The people in Chile are amazing. Some of those mountain climbers. They showed not only capability of, the Rheinmetall vehicles, but of veterans as well.
Yeah, it's sort of bucket list stuff, really, by the sounds of it. I've climbed Kilimanjaro in 2013. After I got back from Afghan, I sort of decided I needed to do something for myself, and I went through a real phase of, I said I'm going to climb all the 7 summits and things like that, and these days I haven't done another one yet. So maybe this will be the inspiration I need to revisit it. So I'd love to know from you if, in terms of advice for anyone who's transitioning from the military or much earlier on in the journey, what advice would you have for them?
Honestly, reflect on who you are. Don't settle for jobs. I think there's too many people that they don't plan their transition. And with Rheinmetall Defence Australia, we go to transition seminars. We've spoken to veterans and they're like, yeah, I'm out in 3 months. I don't know. Getting a job is not that phrase is not a plan. I think the best thing you can do with defence transition, because it is extended. It's over a period of time. You've got time to do education. You've got time to do development. You've got time to do work experience and get a network to really plan that first step and make sure it's a successful one. I think if there is, veterans out there or people leaving defence with an interest in defence industry, be proactive. Jump on LinkedIn, put that you're leaving defence, go fishing. The fact that you're, an Australian veteran, you've got the ability to hold or maintain a security clearance. There's so many options out there, but I think sometimes we settle when we leave. I don't want to. And a lot of us worked on Nauru. We're in security teams on Nauru. Myself, Kyle Wilson. These guys got accommodations for gallantry and things like that. We're better than that. Not to say it wasn't a good job and we had fun and we got well paid, but I think as individuals we're trainable, skilled athletes who can pick up athletes, just people that can pick up information, grab hold of processes quickly. That's what defence teaches you. And we can make decisions, whether it's autonomously or in a team. I think set the bar high, and it doesn't hurt to fail there rather than end up at Woolworths stocking shelves, because we are, nothing wrong with that. But, if you want a career rather than a job, set the bar high, plan your transition.
And I think it comes down to a sense of purpose too. So if it's about finding something that you feel is purposeful and that you can meaningfully engage with. I think veterans think that their time in service will be the pinnacle of what they achieve in their life, but I'd love to see them realise that they can take those parts, and why not aim higher? Why not attempt to do more? Keep setting the bar and challenging yourself for that. And it's great to see veterans like yourself out there who have gone on and done that time and time again. So I want to just quickly unpack the gym, that awesome work you're doing down in Southeast Queensland with the fighting gym, if you want to chat to that.
Yeah, so a good mate of mine, and this is where the network is so, you just talk about transitions and utilise the network. There's someone out there, Ryan Gatley and I joined together. We did, Kapuka and then Singo together. I went to 1RAR, Ryan went to 2, and then he went over to medics later on as well. We've been good mates since 2007, so 16 years. When I moved down from Townsville, he was coaching a few athletes, and he's like, do you want to come and do this? And initially I fought him on it, and it was my own insecurities, really. Like, I'll be honest about that. I'm like, yes, I used to do that, but, missing a leg and stuff like that, I felt like maybe I'm not the best person to be teaching, stuff that involves punching, kicking and fight techniques. But I'm really glad I did. Voodoo Combat's in the gap. We've just moved to a bigger gym already. We're sort of in the midst of that today. We've started fighting this year. I think we've had 16 fights and probably won around 12 of them. So it's great to see not only, that sport. I think when someone asked me about it and it was a parent, they're like, well, what we know about concussion, and it's not, I think we're creating problem solvers. When you get in and spar someone, it's not this macho thing where you just try and beat them up. You're creating processes and plans in your head to solve problems. I think if you pick that up young, then those sort of attributes will go to you, through the rest of your life. Resilience is accumulative. It is a sport where you get some injuries along the way. One of the toughest people I've met is our female, and she's 23 years old. She's in the corporate world. She works at Virgin in marketing, and she's 2-0 now. She loves putting the gloves on and just giving the guys everything. Like, it just makes me happy being around people like that. And I think this is another big part of it. You've got to surround yourself with people that want good things for themselves as well. If you put yourself in a toxic environment, don't expect a positive outcome.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's around that whole warrior culture, I think, in a way that in some ways modern society, I think, has distanced itself from. But it seems like there's a rite of passage when you come into the military. And I can really see how something like the program that you've got there at Voodoo Combat Gym is almost like a rite of passage for some people who are trying to transition out. So can't support that enough.
Yeah, thank you. It's great. We do get some guys from 6 and 8, 9 in because we are close to inaugural, and happy to have those guys and girls come in, or anyone from a defence background. So it's a sense of community that you create too. People sometimes focus too much on the event, which is fighting and things like that, and from the outside perception is that it's an individual sport, but it takes a team to get that person to that physical and psychological state to be confident enough to get in there and do that. So, creating a sense of community as well. I think, it's a really good thing.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. Look, you've done an awesome job. If there's anything else you'd like to add, you speak now or forever hold your peace.
No, well, good. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. We haven't spoken too much, but I've known of you. So, I think you're doing really great things with this podcast. Hopefully, if someone out there is struggling and they see it and it helps them get on the right path, or they pick up one thing from me or from someone else, then it's all worthwhile.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you to all of our listeners. We hope you got valuable insights from today's discussion. You can listen to more veteran transition stories, keep an eye out on our social media channels, or visit our website for future updates.